morning. Thank you, Chairwoman Luna, Ranking Member Crockett, and members of the task force for giving us the opportunity to testify today.
J.Nuccetelli is a former U.S. Air Force Security Forces officer with 16 years of active duty service. And he presented some absolutely remarkable testimony very lucidly to Congress at the hearing that took place just 2 weeks ago about a series of UAP events that he was involved in investigating and witnessing at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Now, also joining him is a witness to one of those events, Chaz King, a former technical sergeant in the U.S. Air Force Security Forces who served for over 13 years in the Air Force, including at Vandenberg Space Force Base. He was, again, directly a witness to one of those events. Okay. And so then that brings us to what happened, I believe, the same evening. And you were called to the scene of this event, but this is the event that Chaz witnessed himself directly. Correct, Chaz?
That is correct.
And so could you maybe walk us through that, with as much detail as you can give, because I don't think you've spoken that many times on it publicly.
No. So as Jeff's already talked about, he came in early to be our crossover member between the ongoing and outgoing flights, get all the kind of details that happen. So we would know kind of the events of the day and, if we need to look out for things or, ongoing events, we had that knowledge. He briefed what the Boeing contractors had seen on at the launch facility on the north end of the base, and had just briefed our flight. Hey, make sure when you're out there tonight, you're vigilant, you're paying attention to what's going on. If anything out of the ordinary comes across, please call it in so we can continue to do what we normally do. So we had that knowledge before we went out there. That night, we probably around 12:30, 1 o'clock, we called that chow time. We got one of the launch complexes out on the south end of the base that overlooked the ocean out there. There was 5 members out there with myself included, one person that controlled the control point, just to make sure no one came in or out of the facility that wasn't authorized, or the area that wasn't authorized. My partner with me, we patrolled the internal part of the facility, and we had 2 people on the outside patrolling the outside, make sure nobody was trying to penetrate the restricted area and things like that. About lunchtime, we kind of congregated inside the engine control facility. I describe it as kind of like a big fishbowl kind of object. You have glass all the way around so you can see a complete 360. You've got an elevated position so that you can see the roadway coming from a distance, so you can see vehicles leaving and coming, so you're not surprised. We were looking out over the ocean, just having conversations, eating our dinner, and we saw a light out over the ocean. Not uncommon, as we had a helicopter squadron that did operations out there sometime, training, search and rescue, that kind of thing. So seeing things like that wasn't an anomaly. But as it got closer to the area, that the light got bigger and brighter, and then it got to the point where the object that was at that point portraying that light was so massive you couldn't see the light anymore. I can describe it as it was dark over the ocean, but the object was, as it comes in, it's a square, but as it gets up to you, it's so massive in size. The only way to describe it's like a rectangle football field size object. Again, it's dark. So it's a darker color object. It didn't have any light coming off of the object, didn't have any light on the sides like an aircraft would have where it's, lighting its position, didn't have any green or red marking lights like most aircraft have. It had no propulsion system. It made no audible sound that, helicopters make audible sounds, aircraft make audible sounds. It just a big giant floating object over us. As it stopped about 100 yards off of our position, at that point, everybody inside the control facility is looking at each other. Do you see that? Am I seeing that? Are we seeing what we're seeing? Are we crazy? And you sit there for a minute because you don't know how to process it, because like Jeff had said, you're not trained to respond to those kind of incidents. There's no checklist that follows, hey, if a UFO lands on the base, this is what you should do. But you do revert back to what you're trained to do, which is to respond to incidents on base. So that kind of launched us into our response. Someone called it in over the radio that it was a large object hovering over our position. At that point, me and my partner start to go outside the facility to get inside of our truck to go drive around to make sure nothing else is going on. At the same time, the other 2 people leaving the facility to go get in their vehicle to go in the perimeter. At the same time, we're running to our vehicles. It takes off. The only way to describe it's like a shot out of a cannon, 1,000,000 miles an hour towards the north end of the base, and it's gone. At that point, we still get in our vehicles. We still drive around to see if there's anything else going on, still calling in over the radio. This is the last known position, and that kind of thing. The whole thing lasted 45 seconds to a minute and a half. We did call it in. Jeff came out as the law enforcement supervisor. And then I believe our flight chief came out, who was the overall ranking member of the team, came out to talk to us as individuals. We conducted our statements, did our own individual accounts, and then Jeff took that back and did a big report to kind of showcase the entire incident.
Wow. And I mean, I have so many questions about this. My first question is, what were you feeling afterwards? I can imagine while you were responding, you weren't, you might be feeling fear, or you might be feeling an adrenaline rush, but what were you feeling and thinking once the thing had taken off?
After the fact, after you had to sit, a minute to sit there and reflect, calm down, like you said, adrenaline goes away. You're in awe. You're confused. You're second guessing yourself. You're trying to figure out, did I really just see that? Have I ever seen something like that before? Where did it come from? Where did it go? What was it doing? A little bit of fear. I mean, that's in there because never having seen anything like that in my life since then or before then, knowing that we didn't have that I knew of in our arsenal, a little bit of panic and a lot of questions myself of, going forward, what was that? What was it doing? And what does it mean for all of us here at Vandenberg?
Yeah, I can imagine. And I want to ask a question, to both of you, and, answer it to the extent you can or the extent you feel comfortable. I mean, what goes on generally at Vandenberg that would make it of interest, possibly to UAP? And I see you guys are laughing. We're skirting up to stuff that you no one can talk about because it's classified. But I mean, look, it's a Space Force base now. It's not just an Air Force base. My understanding is that it is the only place launches happen for some U.S. asset. I don't think it's satellites, but there's, maybe it's missile defense systems. And what I believe that Jeff said in his congressional testimony was that whatever was being launched that night was considered to be the most important launch the National Reconnaissance Office had done in a decade or 15 years or something. So if you can describe in broad strokes the way that's acceptable legally and ethically, what is it that goes on at Vandenberg Air Force Base that would make it of interest in general?
Yeah, so I could start off and then Chaz could add to it. So it's one of our most important military strategic space launch sites. And during that time frame, it was the primary test bed for the National Missile Defense Project, which was a brand new initiative by the Bush administration. And they were that was basically next generation tech that they were developing and testing. The other things that go on there, they develop over, these are multi-year projects where they develop a new piece of technology, space-based technology that could be a satellite system or some kind of new tech. These are typically unique, one-of-a-kind instruments or technologies. And then they will assemble and transport, then launch those assets into space. So the launch that I referenced in the hearing was a NRO launch with one of these critical assets. This was a unique piece of technology that was supposed to give us game-changing domination in the war on terror. This was going to be a game changer for the United States to dominate air and space. So this particular launch happened in 2005, around the time of the encounters that I had and some of the other people. So like 2 years after Chaz's event. And like I said, we had 500 Air Force cops guarding that launch. And other intelligence services. I worked intelligence on that launch. We had real world threats. People did not want that launch to happen. And Chaz and I and our friends were out mitigating those threats in real time. And that site is Space Launch Facility 4. That's exactly where Chaz had his event. And that's where we were launching that NRO rocket from. And that site is regular. I don't know if regularly is the right word, but that site is visited by UAP over and over again.
You're saying there have been multiple events you know of at that particular
Yes.
site, not just at Vandenberg.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
And
so right now,
you don't mean only drones or other strange aerospace assets of U.S. adversaries. You mean UFOs in the class?
These are UFOs that show up while we're on duty multiple times over multiple years. There's a pattern there. And we can only assume it's because they're surveilling our technology, right? And we can't prevent that from happening. There was really nothing practical we could do to prevent those UFOs from showing up. And that's not true for any other thing. Like if we had some adversarial state actor launched an attack from the ocean and they were bringing in helicopters or drones trying to land or attack the site, we're trained to mitigate that. You're not going to hear panic. You're going to hear excitement and things like that over the radio. But, these guys have deployed. They'd already been at war for, 3 years by that point. And, they're not easily panicked. They know how to respond to real world threats.
I want to, just to make this very clear to people in the audience who, might not anticipate this. I'm guessing that, neither one of you knew that day and that night too much about what was going up or what was going up in general. You know that it's important, but this is highly, highly classified stuff. And you know that it's significant because there's more security or you need to be more vigilant, but you know very little about the purpose, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's 100%. We don't know what's on that rocket. It's totally classified.
Yeah.